Alright, so I know you already did, but just for the sake of the intro, pretend you hadn't already seen the title and thumbnail of this video. Now, if I asked you who the top grossing stand-up act in North America was, and according to Forbes, the third highest paid comedian of all time, who would you guess? Well, you already did see the title and thumbnail, so yeah, it's Jeff Dunham. Yes, the ventriloquist, the comedian who everyone always seems to forget about until they're reminded, and then they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. Don't worry though, if the comedy gods on their Mount Olympus looking down at us mere mortals, they haven't forgotten about him because he's won like every fucking comedy award known to man. Now, despite how easy it seems to just forget this guy exists, he's still out there in the wild, performing shows and making that third highest paid comedian money. I feel like even though it seems like most people don't actively follow this guy, it also seems like everyone has had a run-in with him and at least one of his puppets at some point in time, so that's why I thought I would go through and review each one of them. Now, despite his years of success, there's only 11 puppets that he's used for any tours or specials, and an even smaller handful that he regularly uses today, so I'm going to go through and see what I think of every single one. Now, some notes before I begin. I don't know what the proper terminology is amongst ventriloquist circles, and you really don't want to double cross those guys, so I thought I'd mention that I mostly call them puppets throughout the video, but I also call them dummies a few times here and there. Also, there are 6 different specials on Netflix which I used to review these guys. Now, I didn't watch every appearance from every puppet, but I did watch at least 2, usually 3 from each, as I was able. Some only appear once. I wanted to give each puppet an equal opportunity to amuse me before I tore into them. Now, with that being said, let's dig into Dunham's Dummies, starting with Walter. So if you recognize Jeff Dunham, you probably recognize Walter, because he's apparently appeared in each Comedy Central special Dunham has ever done. According to the Jeff Dunham Wiki, not his Wikipedia page, his own wiki, Walter is a grumpy, retired Vietnam War veteran and former welder. He has been married for 46 years, all of which he has hated, and has 2 kids, a son who he considers an idiot, and a daughter whose husband he thinks is an idiot. And if you dig even deeper into the Jeff Dunham puppet lore, you find that Walter may be Jeff Dunham's own father. The depths in which the Jeff Dunham extended universe extend to knows no bounds. So Walter first made his appearance in the Jeff Dunham Arguing With Myself special way back in the dark days of 2006. As for the act itself, it's alright. Word of note, you're going to hear me say that a lot about Dunham's puppets today. I mean, the character of Walter is pretty simple, just a grumpy old man. It's easy to make material from a character whose whole personality is that he hates everything.
At Walmart, what would be your opening line? Oh, welcome to Walmart. Get your shit and get out.
Sometimes I think it works, but sometimes the whole joke is just a pleasant thing upsets me.
So your wife's in town? Oh yeah, she having a good time? She always has a good time. Good. Pisses me off.
You get the standard marriage sucks and my wife is a nag routine, but you know, I'd be lying if I said some of the punchlines Dunham delivers just didn't make me laugh.
I had grandparents who well into their 80s were still having fun. Their 80s, yeah, good God.
I particularly like the clever little mocking laugh he gave Walter.
Walter, happy to be here.
But overall, I thought the jokes were hit and miss. Like I said, some made me laugh.
Show you what I'm talking about. See this lovely young lady sitting right here in the front row? Yeah? This gorgeous young thing. Yeah? Do you see her? Yeah? Do you see her? Yeah? Oh, well.
But a lot of them were just lowest common denominator schlock.
You trying to tell me there's nothing sexually going on between you and your wife? It's very difficult. She gripes about everything. Like what? She said I don't make the right noises during sex. Sorry to hear that. Want to hear what I do? No. All right, you talked me into it. Now, wait a minute. Now, be careful. These are going to be kind of pornographic. Get off.
Really quick, so for the special that I'm watching, Arguing With Myself, where they introduce Walter, they contextualize it by having Sweet Daddy Dee like mentor Jeff before he goes on stage.
You're going to get it crunk like Usher. Like the Ushers? Oh, man, I gotta think what? Think what? You mean going to do well like Toby Keith, huh?
And then they cut to him and presumably 2 of his prostitutes, like every so often, and it's really weird and really jarring every time they do that. The first time I watched this, I had no idea what was going on because I skipped the intro, and maybe that's on me, but even still, it's really strange, and I just wanted to bring it up because it threw me off.
Oh, now that's funny. Wait, no, it's not.
Anyway, so it's one thing to perform the jokes you've written and rehearsed and performed in the past, but doing improvised, audience, participatory type jokes, that's where, in my opinion, a lot more of the real talent lies. And Jeff Dunham, to his credit, does this really well, at least for this show, and really most I've seen of his.
You pal here in the blue shirt in the front row, would you fill one out? Hello? Did you fill one out? Where are you going? Sit the hell down. You bastard, this is TV.
I have to give credit where credit is due. Coming up with jokes on the spot while doing a voice while not moving your mouth for a puppet you're controlling all at the same time, I bet it's pretty tough, but Dunham does it really well. He makes it look easy.
Nick, what do you do for a living?
I work in construction.
Oh, construction. What kind of construction? What do you do?
I work with a general contractor.
Well, you work with the general. You're not the general contractor.
Oh, no.
You work
Not
with
yet.
one.
I will be.
So what is your title, Nick?
I guess you could consider it framing and drywalling.
Framing and drywalling. Got anything for that, dumbass?
Even if you already have the jokes planned, and even if the special, splices it together to make it look more smooth, getting it to all come together live, that's where I would fail as a comedian. So even though his character is pretty simple, Dunham does a good job bringing Walter to life, so to speak. When Dunham does something like telling Walter to read a question himself.
You read this. Dear Walter, after 9.5 years, my boyfriend still hasn't popped the question. Let's just poop the question.
It really makes him feel like his own person. I think that's where a lot of the enjoyment and humor comes from, watching Dunham manipulate us into suspending disbelief and believing that Walter and his other characters could be real people. Again, though, as for the jokes, he tends to rely on dick jokes too much for my taste. Not that I think dick jokes can't be funny, but he goes back to them too often, and often saying dick is the joke. So all of that insightful commentary, that was just from Walter's debut. I watched Walter in some of the subsequent specials, and it was pretty much more the same.
Have you ever had a weight problem? Only when she sat on me. Will you?
Some jokes that landed for me, and some, a lot, that didn't. He repeated a lot of the same material, just with different punchlines. Walter really despises his wife. He has a hatred deep in his bones for the woman he decided to marry. So, in all, if you like not infrequent bottom-of-the-barrel dirty jokes with decent humor peppered in here and there, Walter might be the puppet for you. As a puppet, Walter provides a vessel for Jeff to make semi-politically incorrect jokes that, as I said, don't always land. But it'll never not be funny to hear people ranting about things, and in that, Walter does his job serviceably. Peanut. So if you've never met anyone from Micronesia, Peanut might come as a shock to you, but yes, that's really what they look like. More specifically, Peanut is a, quote, hyperactive, annoying, cute, purple-skinned woozle with white fur covering most of his body, a tuft of green hair on the top of his head, and one sneaker on his left foot. And he's from a small Micronesian island. So Peanut is kind of all over the place, but that also means that he isn't based off of a one-note stereotype that a lot of Dunham's puppets we'll be getting into are. So Peanut's whole shtick is that he's really hyper. Dunham plays the straight man to Peanut's craziness, and he does a good job switching between the two.
You know, we have folks of Asian descent here this evening. Oh, so sorry. Will you stop it?
The act features a lot of rapid talking on Peanut's end and quickly switching back and forth between Peanut and himself. I even get the impression that Dunham is like embarrassed or disinterested in Peanut and have to remind myself that he is controlling both. That's how impressive the routine is.
I'm not their grandpa. Hey, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck.
You're a fucking dog. Stop it! Quack, fucking quack. Stop it! Stop it!
So to kind of cut to the chase, I like Peanut. His act doesn't rely as heavily on jokes, but on his character. Jeff does a good job giving him little mannerisms that are legitimately funny.
It's Santa Ana. Are you sure? Yes, okay.
A lot of his material is lol so random, but when that type of comedy lands, I like it. And for Peanut, it landed for me more than it didn't. Most of Dunham's puppets feature a decent amount of moving parts like eyes, eyebrows, lips, etc. It's charming to see him control something that's really nothing more than a stuffed animal. With no facial expressions other than a mouth to move open and shut, Dunham manages to give it so much life and personality, and it's charming to see Dunham manually moving its arm, and it works.
What the hell is that? That's how I work your arm.
Another thing I'll say is that a lot of Peanut's jokes rely on racist/edgy humor, and I feel like in this day and age, that can be really hit or miss. Once you see funny racist humor, generic racist humor just doesn't really do anything anymore, and Peanut/Dunham ride a fine line between being funny and making me roll my eyes.
Excuse me, but do these guys get together in the morning and decide who speaks English the worst? Okay, Chin, today your day to take the phone order. Oh, this is Chin, I'm gonna phone you right down. I think I do it, Chin.
I've come to realize that Dunham relies on pretty generic material in general for jokes. Racism, shitty marriages, airline food. But a bad joke can make me laugh if it's delivered in a funny way. And that's pretty much Peanut and, really, Jeff Dunham in a nutshell. Little Jeff. So I was going down the list of puppets on Wikipedia, which, if I didn't mention, that's how I'm going through these for now. When Little Jeff appeared in the special I was watching, so I thought I might as well talk about him now. He shows up as a puppet that Peanut is apparently ventriloquizing himself, and that's the joke. He's making fun of Jeff by bringing out his own miniature version of him and having the mini Jeff call itself stupid and ugly. You get the idea.
Handsome Peanut. Yes, Peanut is very handsome, unlike you, ugly-ass Jeff.
There really isn't too much else to say about him, though. He isn't really a character in his own right. He's just used for this little bit at the end of the show. For what it's worth, though, it's alright, if for no other reason than to see Jeff, the real Jeff, voice himself in 3 characters at the same time.
Hi, look at me. I'm a little idiot. That is not funny. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I think it is. Me too. LOL. Shut up. You guys have been awesome. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, Jose Jalapeno on a stick, who we'll get to, he's like part of this bit too. The only thing I can say about him is that his voice sounds different than I would have expected. It doesn't really sound like it'd be Peanut voicing his own character, but now I'm just being pedantic. He appeared in the Halloween special, making variations on the same jokes that were made last time with a different voice.
So does he do anything? He plays with dolls. That's me. And he plays with himself for hours. That's more him than me.
I guess I can point out here that Jeff sometimes awkwardly pauses when he makes like a meta joke, and it kind of irritates me in a really stupid way.
I'm not talking to a doll.
In one of my earlier acts, way back when, Peanut, one of my other characters, he had a little Jeff, and he did a show with him. He had his voice for little Jeff, but I have to come up with my own voice for him because I can't do the same voices that Peanut does.
The only other time Jeff uses this guy, or at least the only other time that I've cared to look further into, is in the Unhinged in Hollywood tour where he whores him out by advertising him as a dummy he's selling.
I don't you mind?
$95.
95 bucks for this? What a ripoff!
This time he gives him yet another different voice, one that sounds suspiciously similar to 1 or 4 other voices Jeff does, which I'll get into later. I was only able to find like a 4-minute clip of this on Dunham's own YouTube channel, but he appears so infrequently, just in general, that I kind of don't want to spend any more time talking about this. I will say though, when he makes him run away and then fights him, that's gold. Jose Jalapeno on a stick. So Jose Jalapeno on a stick is a dummy that's usually paired up with Peanut, which made it easy for me because I already got footage for him while recording for Peanut. As an aside, Jose Jalapeno on a stick was apparently the first puppet Jeff made himself, and I like that he has a variety of dummy types, including one that's really nothing more than a pepper on a stick with a mouth to move up and down. Now as for his character, all I can really say is,
And you're Mexican. No, senor. Mexicans are from Mexico. I see. I am Cuban. I'm from Florida.
I think Jeff gets the most use out of him by making him a character for Peanut to bounce off of. On his own, he's pretty one-dimensional, just a vessel for Jeff to make Hispanic stereotype jokes.
Jose, what does Christmas mean to you?
It's the day Jesus was born.
Right.
I didn't know your gardener was born on Christmas.
Jose's jokes are either about him being Hispanic, him being on a stick, in which case there are a lot of obvious dick jokes, or him being a pepper. It seems like each time he comes out, the jokes are just about those 3 things. On his own, I don't think he's that remarkable, but like I said, paired with Peanut, as he always seems to be, it makes for a decent comedy duo. Not great, but Jeff provides so much personality for both characters that even if the jokes themselves aren't great, their performances usually are.
What else happened? We're getting out of the car today. Out of the car, what happened? He slammed my stick in the door. And now I have this sore stick. Peanut, did you apologize?
Have you ever tried to laugh while keeping a straight face? It's a fucking strange thing to do and it feels unnatural, but Jeff has become a fucking master at it. Speaking of laughing, probably the biggest takeaway I got from looking for footage was listening to the woman in the Christmas special who had one of the most irritating laughs I've ever heard. It's one of those laughs that just fucking stands out amongst the rest. If it wasn't for recording footage for this video, I think it'd keep me from watching the whole special. And if I was in the audience, I seriously doubt I could have stayed for the whole thing. Bubba J. So, Bubba J is Jeff's redneck character. Think of the most stereotypical redneck type character you could imagine. Something Family Guy would create for a one-off cutaway joke.
You know you're a redneck if you come from a rural area and behave as such.
Yeah, that's Bubba J. Jokes about beer, NASCAR, incest, Alabama probably. It's all here, and it gets old pretty quick.
What's your favorite beer? An open one?
More so than any other character so far, I feel like Bubba J's shtick just got repetitive the quickest. Since we've established that Dunham's jokes don't always land, and most of the humor comes from the personality and little mannerisms he gives his characters, and then you have here a character who's presumably drunk and talks pretty slowly, I feel like it's a combination that just doesn't lead to the best of Dunham's potential. I mean, damn, dude, I didn't know you could make so many jokes about beer. There's so many. Well, there's not that many really, but Dunham tells them.
Makes me thirsty for another beer.
And I noticed when I printed it that the ink was kind of weird. That's because I was running out of ink, so I mixed it with beer. Beer nog. How do you make beer nog? Well, you take a big old bowl of eggnog, and you pour it down the sink. And then you drink a beer.
But I mean, the mannerisms and personality, they're still there, just not as prominent. And they still get me to chuckle, though. The lazy eye was a nice touch.
Looking over here, but I'm also looking over here. Woo! Look at that!
Even for a lot of the lame jokes, the delivery is funny enough.
Well, why don't you tell us about the first time you saw your wife? All right. There she was.
I realize I wrote like a dissertation on Walter, and I'm probably going to have to go back and edit that down, but there really isn't too much to say about Bubba J. He's the archetypal redneck character you've seen and probably impersonated yourself before. He says the exact type of jokes you'd expect, but seeing it performed by a puppet, it's enough to make you feign a smile every so often. Sweet Daddy Dee. So Sweet Daddy Dee is Jeff's black pimp stereotype character. According to the one special he was in, Jeff hired him to be his new manager. And what commences are said black pimp stereotype jokes.
I'm what you call a player in a management profession. Right. Pimp.
So I don't actually mind Sweet Daddy Dee too much. For what it's worth, it's, somewhat of an interesting dynamic to have a cool character as Jeff's manager. My only issue is that, to me, it's really awkward hearing Jeff make fun of himself for being white through the mouth of a black character who's supposed to be really cool.
So what ideas do you have for my career? First thing I got to do is school you in street word. What word? What word? What? You said word. What word? Oh, snap. What the hell?
And I think that issue stems from the fact that Sweet Daddy Dee is using outdated slang, thereby making him officially uncool in and of himself. And in his attempt to make Jeff cool, Jeff is then acting uncool and playing a character who thinks he's cool, but who is actually uncool, and using that uncool character to make Jeff sound more cool, when in turn only making everyone sound more uncool. You follow? Really, I just found some of the interactions kind of awkward because I don't know if Jeff can pull off a cool black character, let alone one who's making fun of Jeff for being white.
What are you doing? Trying to find me some hoes, dog. Some hoes? Oh, you mean women? Oh, I got it. Okay. Word. Don't you ever do that again.
But the little mannerisms he gives Sweet Daddy were pretty funny, as always. Like that little lip pucker he has. Having him be Jeff's manager was a funny enough premise that could have been expanded upon, but evidently, and perhaps unsurprisingly, there seems to have been some controversy with the character, and for now, he seems to be put away in the trunk for good. Melvin the superhero guy. So at this point, I would just like to say that Wikipedia's description of each of Dunham's dummies isn't really much more than some jokes they've said in the past, completely spoiling my experience watching them live, but whatever. Anyway, so Melvin the superhero guy's character is that of a nerdy superhero. In fact, his character was actually kind of hard to narrow down. At first, I thought he was like a middle schooler who thought it would be cool to pretend to be a superhero. But no, in like the canon of the Jeff Dunham extended universe, Melvin is evidently a real superhero.
Well, Melvin, do you have any powers?
Yes, really, Like what? I can fly. Really,
How far?
How far can you throw me?
He also has a wife, which surprised me. Like I said, I thought he was like a middle schooler because that's how he acts, but no, evidently he's found somebody and settled down, so good for him.
So you're married? Yes. Does your wife have any powers?
Yes, really,
Like what?
Well, once a month. She becomes evil. And I cannot defeat her.
Alright, so Melvin can fly and has X-ray vision. Now, you have a comedian who makes dirty jokes and a character who has X-ray vision. Think of the most obvious joke you can make with that combination. Yeah, it's in here, and a lot of time is spent on it too, and it gets kind of awkward. And it's done in probably the least clever way you could think of.
Well, can you see through something practical like clothes?
Oh, you're sick. Yes. I love looking at boobies.
So, yeah, a good portion of this routine is like that. So, in short, Melvin the superhero guy is like nearly all of the other puppets I've talked about and will continue to talk about. He has lame jokes, but they're delivered humorously for the most part. Really, though, even some of Melvin's mannerisms seem familiar. The way he answers yes with that childlike enthusiasm is pretty funny, but some of the high-pitched squealing he does reminds me, again, of other puppets. And at this point, I guess I can bring up that although I'm willing to say that each puppet has a unique personality, they definitely don't all have unique voices. You definitely start to notice that each puppet just has a slight variation of the same voice. So, back to Melvin. To conclude, I gotta say, nah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that this character could work, but for the one special he's in, he just really doesn't. Dunham says at the start of that act that there wasn't a better time to bring out a superhero guest.
You know, folks, there's never been a better time than right now in our country to introduce a brand new superhero.
But that special came out in 2007, so little did he know what worldwide sensation would be taking its roots the following year. I feel like there's a world for Melvin to make topical jokes about superheroes. He just didn't happen to be in it. He could say that he joined the Avengers, and maybe the joke was that they don't realize he's part of the group. I can't think of any jokes for that now, but I know there's some there. As it stands for Melvin, the jokes you do get in his one appearance are...
I'm glad I'm wearing loose shorts.
Yeah. I will say, though, the funniest moment of the show was when his hair fell off. The awkwardness was palpable, but Jeff's a professional and played it off pretty decent.
I look like Lex Luthor.
I would have said something like, oh, you discovered one of my powers isn't stopping male pattern baldness or something, but hey, I'm not the comedian now, am I? Achmed, the dead terrorist. So now we're at Jeff Dunham's probably most famous puppet. If you don't really keep up with or care about Jeff Dunham but know of him, this is probably where you know him from. I actually first heard of Jeff Dunham in 6th grade. I had gone to my first concert with my parents to see the Eagles and was bragging about it to some friends, asking if they've ever been to any concerts, and one of them told me he went to see Jeff Dunham. I'd never heard of the guy, and he told me to look up Achmed the Dead Terrorist. Well, I went home and did just that, and being the type of kid who thought Family Guy was the peak of comedy, I thought it was hilarious. The video I saw was probably the one uploaded by this Crobatello guy, because I remember this clip of Achmed being one of the most popular videos on YouTube at the time. Since then, unsurprisingly, it has been taken down, and now there's an official video of the act. So, watching it when I was a preteen, I thought it was hilarious. Watching it today, I must say, it's still pretty hilarious. The theme in which I found myself saying of all of Dunham's puppets is that the jokes are only but the performances are always entertaining. For Achmed, though, both pillars fall into place and he just works.
What do you think of Bush? Oh, I love Bush. Oh, you mean the president? I'm sorry.
I found his performance hilarious and the jokes, for the most part, actually funny, coupled with said hilarious delivery.
Are you scared? Not really, no.
And no?
Not really, no.
How about now? No? God damn it.
You know, Jeff usually gives his puppets a little catchphrase or quirk, and the "silence, I kill you" line, genius.
Silence! I kill you! Silence! I kill you!
Jeff delivers it perfectly, and saying something so funny with a straight face, it really shows off his vocal talent. This phrase was apparently really popular. Like, really popular. Like, look how popular this was.
Silence! I kill you!
Anyway, it's also interesting how just a little eyebrow movement can be so expressive. The character of a somewhat dorky terrorist who died in a suicide bombing, Jeff makes it work. I didn't even notice that his arm fell out of his socket during the whole show. There's still some jokes here that make me roll my eyes, but overall I see why this routine got so popular, and I suppose Jeff did too, because since his introduction, he's gone on to appear in every special thereafter. Speaking of which, everything I've said so far has been in reference to his introduction in Sparks of Insanity, the clip that he's undoubtedly most famous for. As for his other appearances, they're not quite as good. In the Minding the Monster special, he's dressed as an American woman, as that's the scariest thing he can think of, so a lot of the jokes are more so aimed at womanness, but from a Middle Eastern perspective.
Do you dress like this often?
No, only when I want free drinks. Am I right, lady?
I don't know, this one didn't really do much for me. I mean, it's hard for me to dissect the intricacies of a ventriloquist comedy routine, other than to say that I really didn't think it was that great. I mean, at this point, his "silence, I kill you" line has been around for a while, so it doesn't really get that same initial laugh, and at this point in the special, he uses it to subvert expectations.
Just a woman?
Worse, an American woman. Silence? Impossible.
I also watched the most recent Netflix special, Relative Disaster, where he performs in Ireland. This one made me chuckle a few times. There's this running joke where Jeff suggests Achmed drink water to help his headache.
It really could, but read my lips. I mean, shit. Read my teeth. Read my damn teeth. Shut the headache. Have you had enough water? What? Well, some people don't realize how important water is. I mean, it's really, really important. And sometimes if you don't drink it, you get dehydrated. You don't know it, you get a headache. It's really good for your skin.
Achmed keeps sarcastically suggesting it for every problem he's having.
Gives me a big nothing. Really? Yeah, maybe I need more water. Maybe. You know, I can't get the tattoo I always wanted. What tattoo was that? Skull and crossbones? Not funny. Or maybe a face covered with water. Maybe. Damn it.
I don't know, explaining a joke isn't the same as seeing it, but I want to give credit where credit's due. This running joke made me laugh, and it's jokes like these that I like seeing more than your standard sex joke, which there's a lot of here.
Do you know what happens when 72 women all live in the same place together? We suicide bombers are actually killing ourselves just to get away from the angry virgins. So this has been a while that you've had them. Is it still 72 virgins? I'm working on it.
And just as like a little aside, Jeff has kind of found a clever way to deflect bad jokes, because whenever he tells a stinker, your brain, or at least mine, instinctively blames the one who told it, aka the puppet, rather than Jeff himself. So I kind of blame the puppet, and it takes me a little bit to consider Jeff the actual joke teller. Anyway, so this most recent performance with Achmed was better than the monster one, but not as good as his introduction. Like I said earlier, he's been in every special since his introduction, but I really just wanted to see how current Achmed's acts are compared to his popular beginnings, and like I said, he's only alright. Most of Jeff's puppets are only alright, really. He still, of course, gives a great performance and deliveries, but the jokes themselves, they just remind me of Family Guy cutaway gags. Your standard surface-level, edgy, racist jokes. Diane. Okay, so remember that movie Dinner for Schmucks where Paul Rudd plays like a stressed businessman trying to get ahead when he finds out his bosses host a dinner where the employees bring really weird or stupid guests, and Paul Rudd thinks it's weird until he runs over Steve Carell, who makes taxidermized mice dioramas, and he decides to make Steve Carell his guest but feels bad when they become friends, and Steve Carell learns that this dinner was meant to make fun of him. And there's also a boring B-plot where Paul Rudd tries to get his girlfriend back from like this really eccentric artist while also trying to get away from his really crazy ex-girlfriend. Doesn't that sound like just the best plot for a comedy movie? Well, Jeff Dunham was in that movie. He plays one of the idiot guests that someone brought, and unsurprisingly, he plays a ventriloquist in that too. So I wasn't able to find any clips with him and Diane, his puppet wife, in the movie.
Are you looking down my dress?
No.
Why not?
Tim, were you? No. Please don't embarrass me. I'm not doing it. Oh, God.
And from what I remember, I don't think he was in there that much, and I don't really feel like watching the whole movie again to find it, but I can assure you he's in it, and evidently he used her as part of his act in the Identity Crisis tour, which is not on Netflix, and which I could not find any good footage of. But if the current trends continue, I can tell you that her jokes were not that funny, but her performance was. Also, from this short clip, she kind of sounds like Achmed.
My second husband died from a stroke.
A stroke?
Yeah, I used a 9-iron.
Achmed Junior? So Achmed Junior is, get this, Achmed's son. Evidently blown up by some of Achmed's incompetence, he lived in Britain before meeting his estranged father once again. Also, in his explosion, he got half of his body burnt off. And that's really all I have to say about him. I mean, at least in this introduction, he doesn't really have much of a character. He's just something for Achmed to bounce off of and make more jokes. Because here Achmed does like 90% of the talking. Not once, not twice, but thrice, Achmed falls off the platform Jeff has him on, and with his other hand in another puppet, he has to call the stagehand or whatever to fix it. And the third time, this dude brings duct tape. It's pretty funny, but am I the only one who thinks that Jeff could have knocked Achmed off on purpose? I mean, look, he kind of like shoves him off with his one hand. I think this could be on purpose. Was this whole moment staged? Is everything I know a lie? Anyway, so as for Achmed Jr.'s character, it's alright. I mean, he's kind of quiet, which for a ventriloquist puppet, I'm not sure if that's necessary.
It's your son, Achmed Junior.
AJ? That's right. Wait, I thought you were dead. Surprise.
But I think that's why he was brought out with his father. There's some funny moments when he says he doesn't want to be a terrorist like his dad, as well as his fascination with the stagehand anytime he comes out, which I'm not sure if that was improvised or not, and if it was, pretty good improvisation.
Hey. He's kind of cute. Okay, moving on.
But in general, he's a little too quiet to be interesting by himself, I think, but I think there is more that could be done with him if he's ever brought out again.
And you guys haven't had any contact since?
Not much. He's a bad son. I am not. Tell him what you sent me for my birthday. It was an honest mistake.
What'd you send him?
He sent me a bottle of skin lotion.
Anyway, so other than his introduction here, the only other time I found him on any of the 6 specials on Netflix was when he introduced the Minding the Monsters special, which, I mean, was fine. He does a good job. It sounds different here.
Peanut, Jose shall know their place, like my awful father who scarred my face.
So, yeah, that's Achmed Jr. Not really much of a character in his own right, but led to a funny reveal in his introduction and gave Achmed Sr. something to bounce off of. I definitely think there's more potential for him if he's ever brought out again. Seamus. So finally, we come to the end of the Wikipedia list of Jeff Dunham's puppets, and his most recent addition, Seamus. And I mean, Jesus, Seamus definitely stands out. So Seamus was introduced in their recent Relative Disaster Netflix special, which was performed in Ireland. And so Seamus is Dunham's Irish stereotype character. You see the pattern here? So you know how Bubba J makes redneck stereotype alcohol jokes? Well, now you get Irish stereotype alcohol jokes. And that's really a majority of the jokes here.
I thought you were a baby.
Diane,
You sound quite a bit older than that.
that's what a few pints a day will do to you.
Get it? He's a baby, but he likes to drink. So for the context of the show, Jeff is going to adopt an Irish baby while in Ireland, and, well, that baby is Seamus. And I mean, overall, Seamus is pretty forgiveful. Even as I was watching him, I was getting bored. I mean, for one thing, I guess I admire Jeff for taking a different approach on the design, but I really don't care for it. The head is just so big, and the face is just so contorted that I feel like it just distracts rather than enhance the character.
Look at the top of his head. Look at his lips.
And most of the jokes are just poking fun at the Irish and their drinking like we haven't seen a million times before.
So, Seamus, can you walk yet?
No, not yet, but I can do the pub crawl.
Other than that, the context of Seamus getting adopted by Jeff leads to some jokes, as well as him being a baby but acting like an adult, a trope we haven't seen a million times before. Overall, I feel like he was just, like I said, pretty forgettable. And Jeff tries to stay topical, but it was 2017 and he's still making jokes about Brad and Angelina adopting a bunch of kids.
Well, I hope you're happy with Audrey and me adopting you.
Sure,
sure. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just go live with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. They need a kid from Ireland to complete the collection.
I guess you don't know this, Seamus, but they're divorced.
Oh, well, too bad. I'm probably too white for them anyway.
For this one, Jeff had Seamus scold the audience for not laughing,
Oh, fuck yeah, that's a good joke.
which may have been part of the joke from the get-go, but even when he put Seamus away, it just felt so sudden, like Jeff wasn't eager to keep him out any longer.
And that's Seamus, our new Irish baby.
And I don't know, making standard Lucky Charms and Leprechaun jokes to an audience of Irish people, I can only imagine how many of them rolled their eyes.
How can someone your age be at a pub?
Oh, all the drunks just think I'm a leprechaun. I got thrown out of the pub the other night.
What'd you do?
I tried to show off my Lucky Charms. To make it worse, I yelled that they were magically delicious.
So yeah, that's Seamus. In my opinion, ugly design complemented by stale jokes. Not a good combination. Even the performance wasn't that great. The only discernible characteristic, aside from being a baby alcoholic, was his on-again, off-again Irish accent. So, to conclude, I just went down the list these guys appeared in order on the Wikipedia page. I never actually ranked them like I said in the title, did I? Well, he almost has 10 puppets, so it would have made for a perfect top 10 list, but I suppose for this list I'll have to go one step beyond and rank my top 11 Jeff Dunham puppets. Number 11, Diane. Maybe unsurprising, but I remember Dinner for Schmucks being a shitty movie and I couldn't actually find any footage of Jeff performing with Diane, so I had to put her at the bottom. She might actually be hilarious with tons of depth and personality to her character, but I guess I'll just never know. Number 10, Bubba J. So all of Jeff's characters are stereotypes of some sort, but I feel like Bubba J is the biggest archetype of his stereotype. He has a low intelligence and is always drunk, which means he talks slowly and his routines get boring. He also has the most obvious jokes you could think of for a redneck character. He gets old pretty quick. Number 9, Seamus. So Seamus is brand new, so maybe there's more potential to be seen with him yet, but an unappealing design paired with the types of jokes we've all heard before and a character we've all seen before, a baby that acts like an adult, just adds up to a puppet that I wasn't impressed with or found particularly funny. Number 8, Sweet Daddy Dee. Sweet Daddy Dee was short-lived, but for the short time we had him, it was an awkward experience. Hearing a nerdy guy like Jeff create a cool black character that makes fun of himself and his whiteness, I don't know, for me it just didn't really work. Other than that, I feel like there was potential in Jeff's in-universe manager being a pimp, but I guess that will never see the full light of day. Number 7, Melvin, the superhero guy. Like Sweet Daddy Dee, I think there's potential for a character like Melvin the superhero guy, especially with today's current superhero craze still being hotter than ever, in-game aside. The one time we did see Melvin, yeah, it wasn't great, but he did still get a couple chuckles from me, and I must admit, I am a little sad he seems to be put away in the trunk forever with Sweet Daddy Dee. I wonder what they're doing in there. Number 6, Achmed Junior. It's kinda hard to rank a character like Achmed Junior who himself doesn't have much of a character but provides good jumping off material for another, more prominent character. It's fitting then that he's right in the middle. The characters before him I dislike more than I like, and the ones after is the reverse, so Achmed Junior fits right in between. I'm pretty neutral on him, but I think there is more potential to be had. Number 5, Little Jeff. Okay, so I know I said Little Jeff doesn't have much of a character either and hardly shows up, which is true, but there is some stuff I do like about him. First, when he's being controlled by Peanut, it's fun to watch Jeff voice even more characters at the same time. Second, it really was legitimately funny to watch Jeff chase and fight him that one time. It makes me wonder if more physical comedy could somehow be incorporated in his routines. Both of those aspects I like and wish Jeff could do more with. Number 4, Jose Jalapeno on a stick. So, like Achmed Jr., Jose Jalapeno on a stick is more of a side dish rather than a main course. Providing banter for Peanut, he's not bad. I feel like some of his own jokes got stale, but I like his character design and he has a funny personality. I don't think he'd be interesting enough to be out by himself, but as a jumping off point for Peanut, he does his job pretty well. Number 3, Walter. I see Walter as Jeff's most loyal puppet in a really stupid way. He's been there for every Comedy Central special, and he always seems to be there for any promotional material Jeff does. I feel like it's easy to write material for this guy because he's just a grumpy old man, so he can get mad at just about anything, but for the most part it works. The I hate my wife jokes get old, but Walter is a safe puppet that I feel is guaranteed to give you at least a few nose exhales. Number 2, Achmed, the terrifying deadest. So anyway, I feel like I might be basing this too much on his introduction that legitimately did make me laugh a good amount of times, but I still enjoy Achmed a decent amount. I think he has a funny personality and backstory, and Jeff gives him funny mannerisms and decent jokes. I don't know if we'll ever live up to his introduction, but to this day, I still think he's pretty good. And my number 1 favorite Jeff Dunham peanut, well, fuck, I didn't mean to say that, but whatever, it's Peanut. So in my opinion, Jeff Dunham's best puppet is Peanut. And now, surprisingly, it's not because of the jokes, but just because of the amount of personality and energy Jeff provides him with. I think this combination works best with Jeff being the straight man's to Peanut's wild antics. The amount of energy Peanut has combined with Jeff's annoyed expressions, it really is impressive that he's doing both acts at the same time. And for that reason, Peanut is my favorite puppet that has consistently made me laugh. So I probably could have saved a lot of time by just making that list the entire video, but I wanted to go through and analyze the top grossing stand-up act of all time. Other comedians have entire video essays about them, dissecting the structure of their jokes and delivery, but there doesn't seem to be anything like that for Jeff Dunham. So over the course of writing the script for this video, the conclusion that I've come to is that Jeff Dunham is a very impressive ventriloquist. The amount of personality and character he gives his dummies is something to behold, and I mean, his mouth just doesn't fucking move at all. Like, really though, how does he do that? That being said, his actual joke writing ability is definitely something to be desired, and while the personality and charm he gives his puppets is entertaining in and of itself, they're all simple characters that fall into a stereotype we've all seen before, with jokes that are equally unoriginal. There's no depth to any of Dunham's jokes. They're all just surface level offensive jokes that I guess is not too surprising for the top grossing comedy act of all time to have told. You look at a comedian like Andy Kaufman, who not everybody gets, such as myself, but the people who do, they really love him for it. I don't think Dunham has ever told a joke that requires any mental stimulation to appreciate any deeper meaning of. But in a way, I don't think that should be held against him. I mean, his jokes, they could be better and I wish they were, but his characters, they're all simple and accessible to everybody. But in a way, that's his own niche, and people obviously like him for it. Now, personally, I think he could use his puppets for more than just one-note stereotypes. What if he had a character who, over the course of his acts and various tours and specials, went through a character arc? What if he had a puppet that, for one special, had just graduated high school, and had jokes to make about his experience and what he thinks college will be like, and then for his next appearance, he's in college, and we can hear jokes about what it is like, and maybe we can hear about how it's actually nothing like he expected, and then maybe he's even struggling during his time there, and then for his next appearance, he graduated college, and we can hear jokes about his time looking for a job in the workforce. Now, Jeff seems like the last comedian to make any kind of impactful political commentary or allegory, but if he wanted to, now could be the time. Maybe making a statement about how hard it is for a college graduate to get a good job, even with their degree. Or maybe he could go another route entirely and actually show this hypothetical character dropping out of college and having to move back home. Now, maybe that idea wouldn't actually translate well in practice, but I just can't help but feel like there's more potential for a comedy form that involves performing live with your own characters. The last thing Jeff needs, though, at this point is advice on how to be more successful. Now, despite what I've said, the money he's made has definitely shown that he knows what he's doing. So to kind of try and bring it back home, that's my thoughts on Jeff Dunham's puppets. Mind you, I was just going over their stand-up appearances. He had his own show called The Jeff Dunham Show, which, to let the man himself describe what it was.
But you've only heard us talk about what we do off the stage. You've never really seen it. So what we decided to do for our TV show is we took the little guys out in the real world, real life, real situations with real people, and we saw what would happen, and that's what you're gonna watch tonight.
Yeah, it was a combination of stand-up and weird sketches with the puppets. It wasn't very good and got canceled in the middle of its first season. Jeff Dunham also has his own YouTube channel, and on it you'll find even more sketches. Despite the international fame and wealth he's gotten, he seems to really enjoy keeping up with his YouTube channel. He does live Q&As with his puppets and did a live stream just to celebrate reaching 2 million subscribers. He also personally, or I would assume, likes some of the comments on his videos, and with all of the time he spent with them, I wouldn't be surprised if he saw his dummies as his family, and he's really created his own little ecosystem with them. Now, despite all of his fame and impressive ventriloquizing and bad joke writing, I still can't help but get the impression that this is just a nerdy guy who developed a unique hobby as a kid and managed to become one of the most successful comedians of all time through it. I watched a lot, an embarrassing amount, of Jeff Dunham when making this video, but I also got a new appreciation for him. He might not be the most clever comedian, but he's definitely a master at his craft and appears genuine, and for that, I truly do wish him the best.